Welcome. Today, we're diving into a really profound teaching that tackles a feeling I think we all get sometimes. That feeling of being stuck on a treadmill, repeating the same old mistakes. But it offers a pretty radical solution. Instead of just fighting the symptoms, we can learn how to wipe out the very seed of our problems. So let's break down what that actually means and how, according to this source, it's even possible. So let's just start right here with something we can all relate to, right? Have you ever felt like you've solved a problem, maybe you kicked a bad habit, and you think, okay, great, I've moved on, only to find it popping right back up again a few weeks or a few months later? It is so frustrating. It can really feel like you're not making any real progress at all. Well, the source material we're looking at today has this brilliant analogy for this exact feeling. It compares our recurring problems to weeds in a field. Think about it. You can cut them down, they can look totally dried up and gone, but the second there's a little rain, a little bit of stress, a little temptation, boom, they grow right back. And why is that? Well, it's because the seed, the real underlying cause, is still buried there in the soil. So the big question is, how do you get rid of the seed itself? And the answer here is probably not what you'd expect. It's not about just stopping everything, becoming inactive, or running away from the world. It's all about a fundamental shift in your consciousness. The idea is that our actions, when they're done just for our own personal gain, are what create these karmic seeds. So the solution is to change the motivation, the why, behind the very same things you're already doing. And there's this incredible story from the Bhagavad Gita that just perfectly illustrates this. It's about the great warrior Arjuna. Now, before he has this life-changing talk with his guide, Krishna, Arjuna is still a fighter, but he's totally paralyzed by his own personal dilemma about having to fight his family. But after their conversation, guess what? He's still a fighter. He didn't change what he was doing. What changed was his consciousness. He went from fighting for personal reasons caught up in illusion to fighting to fulfill his duty for Krishna. The very same action was transformed into something spiritual. And this really gets to the heart of it. The source emphasizes that you don't necessarily have to change what you do, but why you do it. Your work might be the exact same. You could be typing, printing, managing, but when the consciousness behind it shifts from being about me to being for a higher purpose, for Krishna, the action itself gets purified, and it stops creating those stubborn weed seeds. Okay, now this all sounds pretty profound, right? But how do you actually make that shift? I mean, where do you even start? Well, the text is super clear on this. This isn't something you're just expected to figure out all on your own. The very first practical step that's recommended is to find a genuine teacher, a spiritual master. And the source gives a really specific definition of what makes a guide or a guru bona fide. And it's not about charisma or showmanship or miracles. It really boils down to two things. They have to have received the knowledge perfectly without changing a thing from their own master. And they have to be part of an unbroken chain of teachers that goes all the way back to the original source. This whole concept is called parampara, or disciplic succession. And as you can see here, it's meant to work like a perfect chain of knowledge. It all starts with the original source, Krishna. That knowledge gets passed directly to the first disciples, who then pass it down, totally unchanged, to their disciples, creating a chain that eventually reaches the guru today. The whole point is that the student at the very end gets the exact same, pure, unadulterated message that was given at the very beginning. So how can you actually tell if a guide is the real deal? What I find so fascinating here is the simple test the source gives us. Just check their message. Krishna's original instruction was surrender unto me. So a genuine guide who is just acting as a transparent medium isn't going to change that message. They won't say surrender to me. Instead, they'll point you right back to the source and say surrender to Krishna. Okay, so you found a guide. What's next? Well, the source lays out a really clear path of practice, a specific way to approach the teachings so that you can actually absorb this knowledge. And it really breaks down into 3 key steps. Right, so there are 3 main components here. The first is surrender. And that just means approaching with the humility to say, look, I'm here to learn. I'm a blank slate. You've got to find someone you respect enough to really truly listen to. Second is inquiry. This means asking sincere questions because you genuinely want to understand, not just to challenge or argue. And the third is service. The idea here is that by serving the spiritual master with faith, you're showing your sincerity, and that opens you up to really receive the knowledge. And a huge piece of this whole practice is community. The source is very specific here. It recommends that you seek out bhaktas, or devotees, people who are also focused on this path of devotional service. It suggests that if you hang around people who are only focused on material gain or endless intellectual debates or even just purely internal meditation, it can kind of pull you off course. The core idea is simple, really. Surround yourself with people who actually support your spiritual growth. All right, finally we get to the actual act of worship itself. And for what the texts call our current age, the Kali Yuga, the source describes a method that is unbelievably simple. It's direct and it's accessible to absolutely anybody, no matter what their background is. And it really is incredibly straightforward. You don't need these elaborate temples or complicated, expensive rituals. You simply place a picture of Lord Chaitanya in your home. He is described as the most recent incarnation of Krishna, who actually came to teach this very method. And then what do? You chant and you dance. That's it. Seriously. The source emphasizes that this congregational chanting, the Sankirtana movement, is the #1 form of worship. It's joyful, it's communal, and it's a really powerful way to focus your mind on Krishna and start to change that consciousness. Everything is concentrated in this one simple, beautiful act. So let's just trace this whole path one more time. As you can see, it all kicks off with just a little seed of faith. That faith is what leads you to find a guide. Then you approach them with a spirit of service and sincere inquiry, and you surround yourself with a community of devotees. And finally, you jump into the simple, joyful worship of chanting. According to this teaching, this is the path to wiping out that stubborn seed of material existence for good. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This whole explainer really hinges on one big idea, that our consciousness is primary. It's suggesting that two people can do the exact same thing, but for one of them, it creates bondage, and for the other, it creates liberation. So the question for us to really think about is this: is the why behind our actions ultimately more important than the actions themselves?